Welcome to the Courting Happiness podcast. This is a space where self-care becomes part of your day. A space where you learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness. And my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Courting and Courting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in courting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 51. I am Dr. Kortni Alston. Thank you so much for listening. I'm so happy that you're here. So, I will admit something. For the past few days, I thought about what to talk about this week on the podcast. But then something happened. My fiance, Ken, and I suffered a loss in our family. His beautiful sister, Dr. Patricia Melvin, died. This would be the second family member we have lost in 2 months, along with a dear friend of mine who died a few months ago. Today, I want to do something to honor our loved ones and talk about grief, gratitude, and growth. I am so grateful for meeting Pat. I believe the first time I met Pat was at her home here in North Carolina, and it was the first Christmas that Ken and I spent together in person. Let me explain what that even means, right? The Christmas prior, Ken and I confessed our feelings to one another like teenagers on a phone. It literally felt that way, believe it or not. It was on Christmas Eve, kind of leading into Christmas Day. So the holidays are truly a special time for us because the greatest gift was finding each other. And he was also at a stage where, we were both just so ready to just really continue with this journey that we had. And I say that because many of you who listen to the podcast, but those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome. I am a young widow. I lost my late husband when I was 25 years old. Years later, about 10 years later, I remarried. That marriage ended in divorce. And so when I say that Ken and I were just so ready, he was also going through transition. He was going through divorce. And I really felt that he and I were truly just destined on so many different levels. And I say that because one of the things I love so much and continue to love about our relationship is that we are, I always tell him, I'm madly in love with you. And I am so grateful to have had, as I tell other widows, I am living proof that you can have two soulmates. And I say all that to say is that what I love so much about our relationship is how connected I feel to him and he feels as relates to me. And the core of our relationship is love, which is so interesting because before this podcast, I was going through my iPhone and I actually stumbled on the very first selfie. that he and I took years ago as a couple. And even in that selfie, I see our light. I just see the light. It feels so good. And I'm so grateful for him, for our relationship. And I'm grateful for the growth, right? So I said we're going to talk about grief, gratitude, and growth. And I will say that I was growing through my life. Notice I said growing. For me, it shows strength in being one with the process and really honoring my feelings every step of the way. So growing through means seeing lessons. Growing through means valuing the process. Growing through means practicing self-care every step of the way. Growing through means understanding the power of forgiveness of others and even ourselves, right? It starts with ourselves. So when you grow through, it's stronger than just going through. It's resilience married with process and optimism. So instead of going through, I believe in the transformative approach of growing through, just growing through the process. It's interesting because I start off every semester with my college students. I share the importance of a growth mindset. And growing through speaks to that, speaks to the level of process. So as Ken and I were growing through so many things and finding each other and acting like teenagers the night that we confessed to having these feelings with one another. And that first Christmas, right? That we talked on the phone for hours. I think I recall Ken even called me. We spent all night on the phone, and then he ended up calling me like when he was traveling to Wilmington to spend time with his family for the holidays. And I felt like I was in the car with him, even though I wasn't in the car. I was, back in Georgia at my family home. And that second Christmas, after the first one, where we acted like teenagers and confessed our feelings with one another. That second Christmas, we spent it together in person. And it was also the second Christmas without my mother. So that first Christmas that Ken and I confessed our feelings, that was the first Christmas without my mother. My mother had passed away late August of that year, and it was our first Christmas, not our first holiday without her, because there was Thanksgiving, but it was my second Christmas without my mother. And my mother was the queen of the holidays. She would, the saying, deck the halls. She would turn our home into this magical place with so much sophistication with her decor. It looked like a true kind of a Victorian style Christmas with these evergreen trees and tinsel and beads and this beautiful tree that would center our home with ornaments that represented our family. It was almost like our tree was a history of our family. Because when you look at the ornaments, you have an opportunity to see all of our growth and milestones. She even kept the Christmas slippers I had as a child. I loved seeing those slippers on the tree. And underneath the tree, tell you, this woman was the queen of Christmas. She would have a beautiful vignette of like miniature houses. So this little city underneath the tree, and surrounding it were, she would have like like snow, and it was so gorgeous. And then you have a train track. I mean, the train, right, going around the tree and around this beautiful town that she made, and kind of like adjacent surrounding the tree, because clearly there were no gifts underneath the tree, right, because the town lived there, but kind of like lining up near the wall and leading up to the tree, she would have all of the Christmas gifts that were all color coordinated, by the way, the same wrapping paper. So it's not like I could say, hey, I'm gonna put this I'm gonna put this gift underneath the tree. Mom would say, okay, well, here's the wrapping paper, because it all matched. It was it was beautiful. It was so beautiful. So sharing Christmas with Ken, well, as you can imagine, it was a big deal. It was a big deal for so many different reasons, right? Because here we are, in our relationship, right? And have gone and have growing through all elements of our life, right? Here we are together, and here I am grieving, right? Grieving the loss of my mother, and meeting his family was such a big deal. I mean, for obvious reasons, right? But I say that it was so big because I was also grieving. I was grieving. And I can recall watching Ken's family, and they have great Christmases as well. I love the fact that it's like filled with seafood. It's I enjoyed all those moments, but I remember watching them that first Christmas with them, and first Christmas Ken and I shared it together in person, and I remember missing my family and really missing the way it used to be, because Christmases have changed now since my mother died. It's very different. And I remember feeling that level of grief, like all at once, just hit me. Um, but I was grateful too. I was grateful. I was grateful because it was such a gift in regards to the fact that I thought about those beautiful moments with my mother, and grateful that I had them. Grateful that I can share this on the podcast with you. And I hope that resonates with you, because even as I was sharing the childhood slippers, right, on that Christmas tree, it brought me back there. Brought me back to beautiful moments, beautiful memories, and the magic that she always created. Always created. So now this brings me to Ken's beautiful sister, Pat. So I would spend, the family would spend, and as well as now, and here they are, my family, we're part of each other's lives. And I love the fact that Ken and I, is not like his family, my family is our family. But so family events were at Pat's house. And I remember getting to know my new family, and so grateful for seeing their traditions and being a part of it. But one of the things that stood out was Pat, and I loved how curious she was about me. She would ask me all of these questions about my family, traditions, and more. And one of the greatest compliments came, I'm not sure how long ago it was after that Christmas together, but I remember being back at her house, and she and I are in the kitchen, and one of the greatest gifts she gave me was a compliment that I cherish. She looked at me and she said, "You are so kind. You are so kind." That compliment continues to mean the world to me, because to me, kindness is the greatest compliment. I think kindness is a gift It's a great gift. I call it, it's a great look. I think kindness is a great look. I also think kindness shows compassion, empathy, and a strength that truly exudes beauty. So I'm so grateful for that compliment that she gave me. The other gift she gave me, which would come sometime later, and I wish I remembered the exact timelines of all of these different milestones, but I remember the day she told me, I love you. Honestly, those three words are truly powerful. And I remember like another family member saying to me, Kortni, I love you. Talk about three words that elevate positive emotions for me every time I hear them. So I never took it lightly that she said this to me. I never took it lightly when anyone says this to me. And I truly treasured hearing it from the family, from the new family, my new family, our family. But when I think about it, those words, right, they're life-changing. I love you. You're so kind. I'm so grateful for Pat, my mother's magical Christmas, and finding love again. Finding love again with an amazing man. An amazing man. So during that visit at Pat's house, Ken took me to the beach. Now, he grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is a beach community. But when I look back on it, he could sense that something was wrong, right? That, even though I have a smile on my face and I'm looking at everyone and I'm there and I'm engaged, but he could sense something was wrong because I was grieving. I was enjoying the moments of being there, but yet there's times that I was grieving. I'm like, oh gosh, wish my mother was here to see this, or I'm missing those moments with her. Remember the magic of Christmas with my mother. And I remember he held my hand and me. And every step on the beach with Ken made me walk into a new chapter filled with new memories. And even though at that time I was grieving the loss of my mother, I was making new memories with my fiance and our family. This is also a great lesson when you grow through. I'm grateful that I felt so safe with Ken that I didn't hide anything, right? I honored my feelings and I told him, and he was there to comfort me. Now, granted, I talk about a lot of people in this episode, my late beloved mother and our Pat. I'm so grateful that Ken didn't try to fix it. Didn't try to fix it when I was grieving. All he was there. He was just there while I grieved. He held my hand. He held me. He didn't try to stop me from grieving. And I think that's a great gift that we can give when our loved one needs comfort, right? It's not trying to fix it. I have a saying. I call it, because I graduated from the University of Florida, go Gators, and that's where my PhD comes from, and I'm very proud of that. Love Florida. I love being a Florida Gator. But also a graduate of University of Florida is Bob Vila, and Bob Vila was known for his, I believe it was PBS, right? This Old House. And he would fix the house. Now we live in the world of HGTV and all of these great, renovation shows. But he's like the original. He's like the original, right? And he would fix things. And so I always say when someone is trying to fix someone, I'm like, oh gosh, person's It's like that person's trying to be Bob Vila in that person's life. But the best thing is just loving the person, not fixing it, right? When you're going through grief, all you want is to feel that love. And he did that. He did that. That's why I can sit here and I say, wow, we grew through so much, prior to being there, prior to being together, but then also for the fact of how connected, as I mentioned before, that he and I are, and how he loved me through that. As we went, remember, as I grow through that. So the best thing is really, the best thing we can do is just to love our loved one, right? When we're grieving or when they're grieving. And when we're grieving, the best thing is for us to feel that level of love. Just being there. As much as I love Bob Vila, I'm not needing to beat Bob Vila to fix it. Just loving the person and letting them grow through it. I want to end the podcast with a quote. And I want to kind of call it a special quote because I really admire this scholar. Her name is Dr. Lucy Hone, and she is an incredible scholar, researcher in positive psychology. She's written so many wonderful books. The one I talk about often is called Resilient Grieving, Finding Strength and Embracing Life After Loss. It is a powerful book. It is never too far away from me. It is a part of my happiness library. And actually, you can see that happiness library when you go to my website at drkortnialston.com. And you can check out all the different books that I highly recommend that are in my happiness library. And I admire the work she continues to do as relates to resilient grieving. As a woman, as a person who has suffered loss and who is an incredible scholar. So she has this quote, and it's powerful. So here's Dr. Lucy Hone, quote, "Grief is a byproduct of love. Because we loved, so must we grieve when the person we love is no longer physically with us. But the fact that they've gone doesn't mean that we must stop loving them or thinking about them. Coming to terms with this fact, understanding that your love for that person never dies, it is a major advance in our understanding of grief." I told you, she is powerful. It is a major advance in our understanding of grief. End quote. Wow, she's powerful. It's because she's so right. When we're looking at grief and understanding, as she mentioned, the byproduct of love, right? I have a level of gratitude, as you can see, as it relates to grieving. So as I'm talking to you about the grieving process, I also talked about the things I'm so grateful for loving my family members or family members who have transitioned, from talking about the beauty of my mother and the beauty of Pat. All of this is so powerful. And as Dr. Hone said, it's a byproduct of love. And I also feel that it continues to really inspire me, because grief and the love for my family and friends who have passed or transitioned inspires me to make meaning, to seek it, to value the moments that I have, to really treasure making meaningful moments. As when Ken and I spend time together, and it's interesting because our habits have changed a lot because of the pandemic. But one of the things that we would just sit around and love doing is getting in a car and just driving somewhere, which is so ironic because that's what my parents love to do. My parents, I think I mentioned in previous episodes that my parents would get up in the morning and they was like, hey, they live in Atlanta, Georgia area here in the United States. And sometimes they would say, hey, let's just go to Tennessee for lunch. I'm like, who says this? And then here I am. And Kid and I, we love this. We're like, you know what? Let's just drive. Or let's just go on a road trip. And we just love every moment of the road trip. I love getting in the car. I love the fact that we're sitting next to each other, just talking. Hey, sometimes I love also when we stop off and grab my favorite meal, which happens to be all things French fries. But I just love being able just to spend those moments with him. And what's so great, he loves it too. One of the things he mentioned to me, he said, you know what? When we feel more comfortable with travel as a couple, he says, we got to go back to that again. But what's so interesting, even though our habits have changed right now because of the pandemic, one of the things that we just enjoy doing is sometimes just being still with each other. Might be watching Netflix or Hulu or, watching something on those platforms or just talking, just being there. I'm grateful to say that. I'm grateful for those experiences. And I'm grateful that I truly value the life and the legacy of my beloved loved ones. I really value that. So I want you to think about that today. What do you value? What do you treasure about your loved one? What do you remember that as you're thinking about it now puts a smile on your face, right? You kind of can hear my smile as I'm sharing this with you. What do you like to what do you enjoy savoring about them? What is something that you can't stop talking about? What is the lessons that you're grateful for that they've taught you? Or what are you grateful for what you taught them? There's so much to really grow through, right? In terms of valuing those moments, make meaning, and think about all that you treasure, all that you've learned, all that you continue to love. And I like to always say, I like to continue to operate on, or really kind of operate in their spirit, right, so to speak, really representing them, my loved one or loved ones, how they live. In many cases is based on what inspires me. I think I've talked about in past episodes my mother, how she treats people or how she treated people. And their legacy grows based on how I give back to the world. What are you thinking about doing that's about you giving back? What are you thinking about doing that's about you being able to keep their memory alive, or just treasuring their spirit and what they value doing? And then when you think about those dynamics, I hope that you think about more about what you're grateful for and those memories. I am grateful for this episode with you. Thank you so much for listening. Be kind to yourself. Let's continue this conversation online. Email us at podcast@drkortnialston.com. That's podcast@drkortni alston.com. Join us on Instagram at Courting Happiness. Don't forget, that's courting with a K. Also, I hope you join our private Facebook community. You can find us at Courting Happiness Podcast Community. Our private Facebook group is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. Now, are you ready to spread happiness? We hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. Thank you so much for listening. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.